President Trump calling out Indiana Republican state senators who voted against redistricting, saying overnight in a Truth Social post that they should be primaried. The effort failed this week with a vote of 31-19, killing the addition of 2 more House seats for Republicans ahead of the 2026 midterms. For more, let's bring in former Trump White House Legislative Affairs Director Marc Short. Marc, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So the president's not happy with some of these Indiana Republicans talking about primarying them. What's your reaction?
Look, I think there are many states that allow the mid-decade review and allow you to redistrict. Certainly in Indiana, they can do that. But I think that the White House really mishandled this, Mike. The reality is that Indiana state legislatures are paid roughly $24,000 a year for a part-time job. This isn't their full-time capacity, which is a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing. But, you know, when you begin getting doxxed, you begin getting all sorts of threatening robocalls. I think for a lot of the members, it was a closer vote at first, but they broke away because it's like, this isn't the way we want to do this. And 31-19 wasn't really that close of a vote.
Right. The DNC winter meeting's taking place in Los Angeles. You got former VP Kamala Harris, Governors Newsom and Pritzker there. The former VP weighing in. I want to play a clip from her, and I'll get you to react.
From Jackson to Atlanta, from Sacramento to New York, the American people sent a message. They want leaders who fight for affordability, for health care, for the right of people to participate in their democracy.
What are your takeaways from the recent elections, Marc?
Well, let's go back another year. I think Americans sent a message in 24 as well about the Biden-Harris record on affordability and how they hit record inflation. And so there was a pushback on that. I do think that affordability is a concern for a lot of Americans right now. I think the driving issues for President Trump in 2024 were the border mess that he inherited from Biden and fixing the economy. And I think there's been enormous success on securing the border. But I think that inflation remains a concern for a lot of Americans. And I think it's wrong to dismiss that notion. I think you did see that high in a lot of the exit pollings, whether it was in Virginia or New York. Or I think what's even more concerning for Republicans, Mike, is losing several special elections in Georgia and Mississippi. And so that message continues to come across. And look, I think the president deserves enormous credit for lowering energy prices 25%. But in some ways, that only exacerbates the challenge of inflation. It's still hitting at 3% is because I think largely this trade agenda has gone awry.
In terms of every House Republican is on the ballot next November, those who seek re-election, a third of the Senate, what's your advice to them in terms of how they should handle affordability going into the midterms?
Well, I mean, Mike, the reality is that the trade agenda, our founders made this crystal clear in the Constitution, in Article 1, Section 8, that responsibility belongs with Congress. And so far, Congress has abdicated that responsibility to the executive branch, and they have not reclaimed that. And right now, they're going to sink or swim with the president's trade agenda. And I think it is causing a lot of consternation in a lot of middle of America right now.
Chris Coons, Delaware senator, close friend of former President Biden, is critical of President Trump. I want to play his comment, and I'll get you to react.
President Trump ran on, I will keep your costs down, I will make America healthy again, and I will avoid new stupid wars. He's failing on all three. He seems to be sleepwalking into a war with Venezuela.
How do you respond, Marc?
Look, I think on the national security perspective, there were a lot of voices inside this administration that were advocating for more isolation. I'm encouraged that the president has been willing to stand up, whether or not that's striking Iran when it was necessary, defending Israel. And I think that, frankly, it's good to protect our southern border from the drug crisis that we faced. And so I would certainly disagree with Senator Coons on those fronts. Again, I do think that the concern that's still a big issue for a lot of voters that remains the affordability and cost increases. And I think that the administration needs to devote a lot more energy and time to that.
Well, because even if inflation comes down, prices don't necessarily come down with it, right? I mean, once eggs are up, they're up, aren't they?
Well, look, I think that they can come down, but I think that when you've had energy prices decrease by 25%, that's baked into a lot of those grocery prices because the transportation costs are now down. So the fact that a lot of those grocery prices are still higher, Mike, I think is a reflection this trade agenda is driving prices higher. And I think that it's one that in the first administration, the president targeted his tariffs toward China to try to rally the rest of the world and isolate China. This time around, it's been an indiscriminate tariffs across the board to friend and foe alike. And I think that that is creating not just higher prices, but I think it's also creating a softening in the job market, too.
Marc Short, great to have you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.